Hey everybody. So back before the season started, I predicted who I thought would be the five toughest teams in the NHL. And even though we're only a few weeks in, I want to check in on those predictions and see how those teams were doing as far as toughness goes for the first little less than a month of the season. So, back at the beginning of the year, I predicted that the five toughest teams, in no particular order, just the five toughest teams, would be Florida, Edmonton, Minnesota, St. Louis, and Boston. Thought those would be they all boasted pretty tough lineups and had guys willing to drop the gloves. Well, so far this season, some of those teams have been pretty tough, and some of those teams have not. So, the reality of it so far this year, Boston leads the league in fights with five. They've fought more than any other team in the league so far. Buffalo, Colorado, and the New York Rangers all have four, and then a whole bunch of teams have three right now, including Edmonton and Minnesota, who were on my list in the preseason. So, some of the surprises here, though, have been Florida and St. Louis, who each only have one fight so far this year. Now, it's still very early on in the year, and there's obviously a long way to go for these things to change. But at this point, just checking in on it, there have definitely been some surprises. Florida only having one fight is very surprising to me after they led the entire league in fights last year. Now, Michael Haley's not playing, so that definitely has an effect on it, considering he had 22 fights last year. But I'm very surprised that Florida has not been more active in the fight category, especially with the lousy start to the season that they've had. However, I do think that Florida is definitely going to pick it up in the toughness category as the season goes on. Edmonton and Minnesota, they've both had they haven't fought a ton, but they both have three. They've had a decent start to the year toughness wise. St. Louis boasts a tough lineup every year, but never actually fights that much. It's kind of unbelievable. Last year, outside of Chris Thorburn, no one really fought that much for them. So even though they have a number of guys who are willing to drop the gloves, they don't really do it that much. And so far, Pat Maroon has been the only one this season to fight for St. Louis. So Thorburn hasn't really played much, which certainly affects that. But it's Bortuzzo, nothing from him. Edmonton, nothing from him. It's just Braden Shen, nothing from him yet. So slow start to the year for St. Louis, and again, a little bit surprising because they've had a lousy start to the year. Now, Boston, I did not expect Boston to lead the league. I knew Boston had a pretty tough team, and they don't have that one guy who fights a lot. They're definitely a toughness by committee type team, but them leading the league is very surprising to me. But Brad Marchand has fought twice already this year, and that I think he's had two fights over the previous 5 years before this year. I mean, Marchand's a pest and he's a rat of a player, but he doesn't fight much. But so the fact that he has two fights already this year is very surprising. He fought a little bit when he first came into the league, but the last 5 years or so, he hasn't done much fighting at all. So for him to have two fights already is a big surprise. Kevin Miller only has one fight. He would be the guy that you would think would lead the team. Nola Chari's got a fight, so I forget who the other one is that's fought for Boston this year. But anyway, Sean Corrali, he's the other one. So Achari and Corrali, fourth line guys, you would expect it from them. Kevin Miller, he's out injured now, but you would expect it from him. But, again, Boston's a toughness by committee team. Now, on the reality side, there are definitely some teams that are surprising that they have so many. Buffalo. Did not expect Buffalo to be anywhere near the top of the league in fights. And by the end of the season, I suspect that they will not be. They really don't have many guys who fight at all. The only reason Buffalo's up here is because Zach Bogosian has 3 fights already. He fought in 3 straight games for the Sabres, and he's usually, he's a pretty tough guy, but he usually finishes the year with 3 or 4 fights, not 3 in the first month. So that's a little surprising from Zach Bogosian. And, now I wonder how much more is he going to fight throughout the rest of the year, because like I said, he usually finishes the year with 3 fights. Now he's kind of put his name out there in the fighting circles of a guy who's willing to drop the gloves, and on Buffalo's team, him and Nathan Bellew are really the only guys who drop the gloves at any sort of regular basis. So how much more, is he going to have to fight a lot more now because he's been so active early in the year? He might finish the year with 7 or 8 fights if he stays healthy, which is a problem for him. Colorado, another team I did not expect anywhere near the top, but they've had pretty good team toughness so far. So, I'm just surprised to see them there. And the New York Rangers, another team, they do it by committee. And that's how most teams do it now. You do not see the one guy. There are very few teams left who have that one guy who has a ton of fights and then everyone else doesn't have any. Or, the enforcers are obviously gone. It's a toughness by committee approach for many of these teams. And we've seen, some interesting teams active early. And then obviously there are a bunch of teams with 3 fights right now. Could definitely not list them all. So, just want to check in and see where we were at toughness-wise, and that is where we're at in the NHL right now. Fighting's picked up a little bit. I really don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to talk a lot about that. But after an extremely slow first week, fighting's picked up a little bit. So it's actually back to about where it was last season. And knock on wood, let's hope that at least stays the same or maybe even gets better. But just want to check in, and some surprising tough teams to start the year. Some surprising teams that aren't playing tough to start the year. But we will see how it all shakes out as the season goes along. I definitely expect this to change as the season goes on. So, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media, check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you would like to donate on Patreon, link is also down in the description. Don't feel obligated to do so, but if you are willing and able, then it is certainly appreciated. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Let's get to 300 subscribers so I can do the giveaway. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.